Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Love Alchemy, the place for divine love transformation. And I am your host, Tamara. And today we have a special guest with us, Brenda Sharp, who has been with us before, talking about entity attachments. And she's back with us again, and it's very exciting. And the topic today is going to be hypnotherapy, unlocking the mysteries of the mind. But first, Brenda, tell us about yourself.
Well, in 2005, I became a master hypnotist and a certified clinical hypnotherapist. I'm also a psychic, a medium, and a channeler, as well as I do Reiki. And life is very interesting. I channel. I work with the paranormal, and I work with past lives. I'm also clairvoyant, clairaudient, you name it. So anyway, I guess I've been gifted with all of these beautiful gifts, and didn't know I had them, although at the age of 3 is when my awakening happened, but it was not acknowledged until 2005.
Yes.
So it was a huge, huge deal for me, and everything just kind of went whoosh, and it went so much so that I could not ignore it any longer, so I had to accept it. And as I was accepting it, it even opened up even more channels as well. So here I am.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and that's very exciting. As most of you know, that I've known Brenda for a very long time, I think since 2010. And I can tell you, when she did or assisted or did hypnotherapy with me, we've done it quite a few times, that it did certainly change a lot of things in my life. So very helpful, very interesting process with hypnotherapy. And now with hypnotherapy, you kind of have an interesting story. Would you mind telling about how you got into hypnotherapy and your friend Edna, who kind of assisted with that process in some way?
Oh, well, absolutely. It was a beautiful day, actually, and I was a little bit lost. All of my kids were either finishing school or no longer needed mom around, and I had done numerous things prior to that. I'd worked in a hospital in ICU and pediatrics, oncology, gynecology, the forensic psychic ward, psychiatric daycare, and so as well as other things, surgery and whatnot. But anyway, I did that. I also was a mayor of a small town in Manitoba called Wascada, as well as I became a realtor. I did that for a couple of years here on the worst market that you can have as far as being a realtor is concerned. So that didn't last long, but I did learn lots. So anyway, my life has been fairly full of different things and whatnot. But one day I just felt lost, and I thought I had this incredible feeling that I was here to do something, but I didn't know what it was. I was totally lost. And it was something that I couldn't ignore, as far as I knew I was here to do something. It just kept on repeating in my mind. So I went out to one of the parks here that overlooked the Glenmore Reservoir. And it was, I think, April, I guess is when it was. March actually. And as I got out of the car, it was a beautiful Chinook day in Calgary here, and I got out and I thought, I know I'm here to do something. I don't know what it is. And the tears started coming to my eyes, which of course at that time I didn't know I was in a hypnotic state. And the answer came to me, and it kept on repeating in my mind, and it was hypnosis. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm fascinated with hypnosis, always have been. And anyway, I thought, yeah, I'd like to learn something about hypnosis. So I phoned my friend Edna, and we were real estate partners, and she was extremely psychic, and she was a mentor for me as far as introducing the spiritual world, which I had no clue of whatsoever, not being religious, of course. So anyway, I was in for a real journey. So anyway, I told her about what had happened, and she says, Brenda, she says, I know that's where you're supposed to be. And I said, well, I said, if I do it, I said, I definitely want to go to a reputable school and learn what there is, everything that there is about it. So anyway, she said, well, okay, do it. And so anyway, I went home and I opened up the computer, and the first thing that came up was institute in Sherwood Park near Edmonton, Alberta. And so anyway, I phoned this woman and I talked to her a bit, and she told me about the course and the cost for the weekend introductory course, and I think I stuttered because I didn't realize it was going to cost that much for a weekend. So anyway, what ended up happening, I phoned my girlfriend back, Edna, and I told her what it was, and she said, so are you going to do it? I said, oh, I don't know, that's a lot of money, and you just don't take a couple $1,000s out of the bank account without telling your husband what you're doing, and he didn't have a hot clue what it was that I was even thinking of, right. And disappearing then for the weekend. So anyway, she says, well, Brenda, she says, I know this is your path. She says, I know this is where you have to go. So anyway, she says, if I go, would you then go with me? And I thought, well, sure, I'll go with you if you decide to go, thinking that she wouldn't, of course, go.
Right.
But she called me back not even 10 minutes later, and she said to me, she said, Brenda, she says, I just talked to Annie, and she says, I'm all registered. She's waiting for your call. And I just, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I guess I really do have to tell my husband what it is that I'm about to do. So anyway, I gathered up some gumption from somewhere. Don't ask me where. And I went to him, and he said, sure, go for it. So I did. And we headed out that morning and drove up to Sherwood Park and drove up to this beautiful place in the country in a great big huge barn type of building, brand new. It was a school, actually. It was her hypnotherapy school. And we walked in, and she, of course, grabbed both of us and gave us a great big hug. And me not being a hugger and never was a hugger in our family, that just kind of, whoa, what's this woman doing? But anyway, I found out later that she says she does that because then she feels our energy. And it was quite interesting. So that weekend course was the start of my journey into doing what I do today. And unbeknownst to me, I was a person that cried over absolutely everything. I mean, my husband refused to take me to shows because I would sit there and bawl. And not knowing why, I didn't have a hot clue other than the fact that I felt the show was very emotional. But in class, she told us that crying is something that has not been dealt with in your past. And that opened up another big, huge door. Yes. And so anyway, that weekend, I booked a private session with her, and it was amazing. It was just, she says, what do you want your session about? And I said, well, I just want to get rid of some weight, because I didn't know why I was there really, other than the fact that I cried. And apparently it was from something from my past. So anyway, she did a session with me and gave me some hypnosis suggestions. And I walked out of there, and the next morning I left food on my plate. And it was about 3 weeks later that I realized that the weight was just falling off me, and my clothes were getting loose and my belts were being tightened. And so that was the beginning of my connection with hypnosis. But after that course, I knew I was hooked, as well as everybody else in the class. And what ended up happening, Edna and I completed a full year of hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and everything that's connected with it regarding the paranormal, past lives, channeling, the whole works. Yeah. And it was quite a process, but I learned a lot. Yeah. I'm very glad that I took all of that education.
Yeah. So that was definitely a turning point for you in your life, and kind of helped to release quite a few things that were kind of lying beneath the surface.
Boy, were they ever.
Yeah. And so you had mentioned hypnosis. So let's talk about the difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy, because a lot of people think that they're one and the same when they're actually two different things.
Absolutely. Hypnosis deals with the effect. It deals with the symptoms of whatever it is that you have, but it doesn't go into what caused those symptoms in the first place. And that's the difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy. In hypnosis, you give suggestions that alcohol tastes like rotten turnips or stinky potatoes or whatever the case may be. Right. And so anyway, that deters you from drinking that particular product, or as far as smoking is concerned, or bad habits, all those types of things that will stop you from doing that temporarily to permanently. Now, when I say temporarily, that is because the emotion that got you into that position in the first place has not been released. So when something else happens or triggers that emotion again within your subconscious mind, then that habit will then come back to you. And that's why a lot of people with the alcohol, as soon as they walk back into a bar or a friend comes over, they feel that they need to have that drink or that cigarette or whatever the case may be. So then they say, well, hypnosis didn't work. But actually it did. What actually happened was an emotion came up within you that reminded you of what it was that caused that particular habit in the first place. And that's what hypnotherapy does. We then go into the subconscious mind as we do as far as hypnosis is concerned as well. But we go back to the point where that habit began. What caused that certain habit or symptom or disease or whatever the case may be? What caused that in the first place? And it's amazing, because a lot of people will say to me, oh, well, I let that go years ago. And I do an interview with people prior to doing the session, and I get a lot of information from them. And something comes up about something, they'll say, and I know that that's where they need to go in the session. They say, oh, I let that go years ago, but I still know that there's numbers lined up and whatnot, and other reasons for me wanting to go into that. And when I do go into it, and after the session, they say, oh, I can't believe that I was still carrying that. Yeah. And I said, you have to go into the subconscious mind. You cannot do it at a conscious level. You may think you've done it at a conscious level, but until you go into that Pandora's box that we have in our subconscious mind, that's what holds all the secrets as far as our diseases, our phobias, our addictions, you name it. It creates all kinds of issues for us. Accidents, it creates broken bones, it creates diseases. It's unbelievable what our subconscious mind does to us.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, like you said, people say that oh, I dealt with it, or they try to push these emotions or whatever it is, they push it aside or bury it because it doesn't feel good, or they just want to forget about it. And what that is creating is creating a bigger problem down the road, because suddenly you don't know what it is that is triggering this, or why this illness happened, and it's something that's lying underneath, something that we've buried a long time ago, we forgot about, or we thought we put it in the past, but we haven't dealt with the emotions of it. So that's really important, that we become aware of those emotions, what's lying beneath the surface, right?
That's true. And especially when it comes to anger or depression, those types of things, because we don't know where it comes from, but we do get angry if something triggers us. We have maybe no idea what it is that's triggering us, but we're mad about it. But when you go back into the subconscious mind and find out what it was, it's really simple to let go of. And that's the thing. This is all so easy and simple to release and let go of. Yeah. And it only takes a matter of seconds, and you have to just feel that emotion for a second in that subconscious mind. And once you do that, then it can be released from your body permanently. And those things that triggered you before to be angry or whatever the case may be, or make you sick or have a broken bone or whatever the case may be, once that is released from you, that's the end of that. And it's so healing. I mean, I had a gentleman whose spine was degenerative, and I had done a session for him, and what ended up happening was he was angry at his father because his father would always take all of his accolades or any money or trophies or anything like that, and he could not stand up to his dad. And what ended up happening, I brought the dad into the session, who had actually passed away, and I asked him to ask his dad why he did that to him, and his dad said, well, because I didn't feel worthy as far as my successes were concerned towards all my siblings. And he said, I did not feel worthy, so I took your accolades and presented them to my siblings as if they were mine. Well, at that particular point, the client then realized, how his dad felt, and he didn't feel that bad about that any longer because he knew that his dad didn't feel good about it. And so anyway, a month later, I got a phone call from him, and his spine is regenerated, and it's unheard of as far as the medical industry is concerned. But it was confirmed by another client that I had, who actually ended up being a chiropractor.
Okay.
Sorry, my mind just left me there. He was a chiropractor, and he said, Brenda, this is highly confidential. And he said, but you need to know the power of your sessions. And he said, I didn't believe it at first either, but he said, I brought him back here and re-x-rayed him, and sure enough, his spine has regenerated. So it was great confirmation for me, and I truly thank that person for letting me know about this, because that is the power of hypnotherapy, and that's how our minds can create so many diseases within our bodies, and yet it was so easy to let go of and to be healed. And I don't do that. I just have to be very clear. I just take you to where you need to go. You do all the work. I just help you to get there. That's all this is. Yeah. This is what this is about.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
so
it's life changing. It really is.
Totally. And there's effort involved, and you have to be willing to allow it to open up to it, to do the work.
Yes.
And be open to receiving that information and to allowing that to heal, or for the healing to take place.
Yes,
right?
And there's a lot of people too that want to have hypnotherapy done, but they come to me, they say, well, I've never been hypnotized before. And then what happens then? I hypnotize them, and they are actually hypnotized, but they're in control. And I can't get them to go where they need to go, even though they are hypnotized. And with that happening, I then bring them totally out of the hypnosis or hypnotic state, and we have a little chat and whatnot. And but what will happen with some people, and I've only had one person that it became a tug of war. And this person was not going to be hypnotized because it became a tug of war.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything about that. You have to be willing to release and let go of. And I'm willing to work with you in order to get there and find out what it is that's stopping you from being hypnotized, because everybody that's in control has an issue as to when they didn't have control, when they were a child probably, or as a young adult or whatever. There was a situation that happened and they had no control over it. But if we can figure out what that is and release that, then that opens up the doors to whatever else happens to be in that subconscious mind. And it's so powerful for the client. It's amazing to have that awareness and have that awakening, and fine-tuning those little items that happen to be in that subconscious mind.
Yes, so that kind of leads me to my next question of, why do we hang on to things?
Oh, good question. Actually, our conscious mind, we don't have developed when we're first born. And with some people, that conscious mind is developed quickly, and with others, not at all. And you end up going through life like I did until the age of 55, not realizing that I had everybody else controlling me and telling me what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, and whatnot. And I trusted them. And whether it be teachers, people of power, parents, relatives, you name it, I was in total trust of them, because I was basically brainwashed to not control my own life. I did whatever was required of me, and that came from prior to being born. Now, trust me when I say this, as soon as the fetus is conceived, or you are conceived, that fetus starts growing, but also the soul is also there and knows exactly what they're walking into, as well as what's going on around them 24/7 from the day one. So it knows whether you're wanted or not wanted, or what type of family you're going into, what is expected of you, and whatnot. And when I was conceived, I knew my mother didn't want me. So I became the perfect child, so to speak. And I did whatever, whenever, however, in order to receive that love from my mother throughout my entire life. And if you want somebody to love you, you do as they ask of you. And of course, that's what I did with everybody. I was a people pleaser.
Yes.
And boy, did life change around my house after I realized what was happening to me. And I was confronted by my oldest daughter and my mother, my sister, and my husband one day on Mother's Day, believe it or not. And they all said, "You're not the mother I used to have. You're not the daughter I had. You're not the sister I had. And I don't know where my wife went, but she's no longer here." And I said, "You're absolutely right, because I was there for you, and you." But I said the one person I was not there for was myself.
Yes.
And that's when I started saying no to people, and Mom never says no to anybody.
Right? That's true.
So it was awakening not only for me, but it was also for the family as well. And very hard to take, because that's what they expected of me. That was my role, was to do everything and however and whatever. And it gets very tiresome being a people person.
Yeah.
It really, it's exhausting.
Totally.
It's absolutely exhausting. And what ended up happening in that whole process over the 55 years, I lost who I was, because I was never allowed to be who I was. That's because if somebody said, especially my mother, "Oh, I don't think you really want to do that, do you?" Oh, maybe I don't. Yeah. So be very careful as to what you're saying to your children, as well as people pleasers and whatnot, because it's pretty devastating, and it's hard to finally actually find out who you actually are.
Yeah. And I imagine that, like you said, be careful what you say to your children, because over and over again you're saying the same, passing along that information, that dialogue, those words, communication, and that creates a dialogue in their own mind, own feeling about themselves, understanding themselves. And if they're not given the permission to be who they are, then they become who you think they should be, and then they lose their identity.
Yeah, and that has to do with being the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, because the conscious mind is the doorkeeper to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind will not take in anything that the conscious mind says, "Don't take that in." So not only do you have to be careful as to who you listen to, but you also have to be careful as to listening to yourself. And that's a big one, because quite often we say things to ourselves that we don't really mean and don't really want, but that subconscious mind will give you exactly what you ask for, whether you believe it or not.
Yes.
I had an aunt who had worked for a company her entire life, and they ended up selling. And the company that bought it, they weren't sure whether or not the pension plan was going to be honored by the new company. And this terrified her, because she was a pensioner, single, no children. She had family members and whatnot. But what ended up happening, she kept on repeating to herself, "I can't survive. I won't survive. I can't survive. And what ended up happening, she wanted to talk to a friend about that. And the friend, of course, was entertaining at the time and didn't have time. So she went out for a walk. She came back to her apartment. And while she was trying to open up the door to the apartment, she collapsed. And the people out across the street, there was 2 women having tea in their apartment and noticed that she collapsed. So they immediately phoned the ambulance. They came and got her, and she had a massive aneurysm. And of course, she came to for a minute or two, and the doctor said, do you want to live or do you want to die? And she said, well, I want to live. So they flew her to Vancouver. And what ended up happening, she was in a coma after the surgery. The surgery went extremely well, but they couldn't get her to come out of the coma. So I asked my mom, I said, would you like to go and see her? And my mom said, yes. So I went along with her and took her. And the first night I walked in there, she was in ICU. And of course, there was a nurse at the foot of her bed. And I was watching her monitors and whatnot. And I spoke to her in my hypnotic voice. And I just told her to relax and have a good night's sleep. And in the morning, she was going to be feeling better and healing herself. And as I was walking out and I left her that night, the nurse had turned to one of the other nurses. She said, you should have seen that woman's blood pressure go down when that lady was talking, telling her to relax and whatnot. And I just kind of grinned to myself because I didn't realize I was a hypnotherapist. So the next day, my husband had called me, and he actually knew the key to the subconscious mind. And he said, oh, you might want to tell her that the company that has bought over the company that was being sold is going to honor everybody's pensions. And I knew that was what it was that she was concerned about. And so anyway, I went in, and that next night I said, oh, you needn't worry about any of your finances. Your friend is taking care of paying all of your bills and tending to your financial needs right now. And I said, the company that has bought out your company is going to honor all the pensions, so you will be financially stable again. So there's nothing to worry about. And tomorrow morning, I want you to be totally and completely wide awake. So I walked out again, and the next morning, and we went in, and she wasn't in ICU, and it scared the living daylights out of me, to tell you the truth. But anyway, we found out that she had woke up and that she was on the 3rd floor. So we walked up there, my mom and I, and we walked in, and I said, oh, hi, how are you this morning? And she had this great big huge grin on her face, but didn't say a word. And the nurse that was standing in the corner, she says, yeah, she says, the strangest thing. She woke up this morning, but we can't get her to talk. And I kind of tapped my head, and I thought, oh, you idiot, you. Okay, at the count of 3, you're going to be totally and completely able to talk. And I counted to 3. I said, 1, 2, 3, you're now able to talk. And she said, oh, what a beautiful morning. And she was fine after that. Yeah. It was she had healed herself, and the surgery was completed, and she released the reason for not wanting to wake up, because she had to deal with not being financially capable of supporting herself. Yeah.
It's incredible how these things just kind of they affect our physical, mental, emotional health, and without even realizing it, that's what it is. And if we became more aware of our bodies, of what's happening, we're able to release these things, like dive deep and be willing to do the healing. Yes. Like, can you imagine the type of world we would be living in?
We could actually create peace on this earth rather than the hell that we have created. And not only with ourselves personally, but also with the governments and whatnot, because what ends up happening, we all talk at a conscious level to one another, not subconsciously. And we portray something that we're not always wanting or wishing for, because it's a game. Right. You know, I'm going to mess with this person's head, or whatever the case may be. Yes. And that ends up creating wars and killing tons and tons of people. I mean, the forces as well have power over, they take these young kids. I mean, where on this earth can you hand a kid a rifle and say, go shoot another kid? Yes. Because there's a line between our two countries. Yes. It's just, it's insane. It really is insane. But that's the power that we have. They've brainwashed them through hypnosis, and that's what we have created in this earth, and it doesn't need to be the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point, is that and a lot of us think that, I'm not under hypnosis, or I haven't been brainwashed, but actually we have been. Like the TV, our phones, whatever is happening.
Yes.
If we're not aware, then we will just let it go and become basically lazy at thinking for ourselves, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we really have to watch what we read in the newspapers, what we watch on TV, because they want you in those emotional states. Because if we tell you something really bad, guess what you're going to feel? You're going to feel really bad, and that is an emotion.
Yes.
And it's the emotions that create the diseases within our bodies. Big time. Yeah. So when you're reading a book, I don't know if you've ever read a book and you finish a chapter and you think, oh my gosh, I know I read every word on the pages, but I can't remember a thing of this last chapter that I read.
Yeah.
And when you go back and reread it, of course you remember it, but you were in a subconscious state. Your mind was elsewhere.
Yes.
And that's very dangerous. And we have to stay conscious. I mean, it's like children being glued to the TV. They're so in tune with that what they're watching on TV goes right into the subconscious mind, because you can call them, you can holler at them, and they don't hear you.
Yeah.
They are so engrossed in the TV. Well, the same thing happens to adults as well if we're not careful and watch what we're being told, or what somebody is saying to us, or what we hear on the radio. When you listen to songs, you can go into hypnotic states.
Yeah.
Music, the words to music are hugely addicting, are controlling for us as well.
Right.
So, and I don't know if you're in a subconscious state and you listen to the music, but you're not listening to the words. Just one day, stop and listen to the words of some of your favorite songs.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed what you will learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can't say how many times that I've experienced that, and realizing, oh, what am I listening to? Oh, what are those words that I'm hearing? And when you become aware of what's happening in your outside world and what's going on in the inner world as well. Those are really important. So now with regards to hypnotherapy, what about past lives?
Oh, I love this subject.
Let's talk about that, what you've experienced, or just tell us all the stuff.
Okay, first of all, don't push the delete button, because this is really, really interesting. Past lives, and it doesn't matter to me whether you believe them or not, but just listen, because past lives create so much turmoil for our present lives. I will give you an example, and that example happened to be me. At the age of 40, I became extremely ill, and I was sent to a heart specialist, a lupus specialist, ENT, you name it. Nobody could find out what was wrong with me. I was coughing violently. I would stop breathing. I had heart palpitations. I had all kinds of symptoms. I had horrific nightmares of snakes, absolutely horrific. And I would wake up screaming and in a nightmare, and my husband would have to calm me down. But also I would lose my breath and couldn't breathe, and he'd have to hit me on my back at night in order to get me breathing again. And they put me on high doses of antibiotics until the doctor said, this is the last antibiotic that we can give you unless we put you into the hospital and give it to you IVs. So he says, if this doesn't work, you're going to be admitted. And I coughed violently, just really violently, and I had no bladder control whatsoever. And I would throw up at anything, at any time, not knowing when it was going to happen. But anyway, so what ended up happening, I went in to go get this prescription, and it was extremely expensive for 5 pills. And the pharmacist, who I'd been going to for quite some time, he said, Brenda, he says, you're in here a lot. Do you mind me asking why? I said, well, I don't know. I said, nobody else seems to know. And he says, well, what are your symptoms? And he then said to me, it sounds to me as if you're allergic to something. So anyway, I marched right back into my doctor's office, which was right next door to the pharmacy. And he said, well, we'll send you to an allergist. So anyway, I went and I told the allergist, and he put all the pins in my back and nothing showed up. And then he said, well, did you buy any plants or anything? Now, this had been going on for 6 months, and I knew exactly when it started. It was in August. And so anyway, he said to me, well, he said, have you bought any plants? And I said, yes, I bought a fig tree, and it's in the kitchen. And he said, oh, he says, they're one of the most allergenic plants that there are out there. So anyway, he said, the leaves are full of milk. He says, I've got one actually in the office. He says, they're everywhere. And I said, yeah, tell me about it. And so anyway, he poked me 6 times and he gave me some other things, as well as he put this milk on this one needle prick, and instantly, I had all the symptoms that I had had at separate times all at once. I coughed, I lost my breath, I had heart palpitations, I peed my pants, all of this in the doctor's office. It was freaking embarrassing. Anyway, he immediately gave me a shot, and he said, you are extremely highly affected by the fig trees. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I came home and got rid of the fig tree and whatnot. But it wasn't until after I had taken my training regarding the past lives. And what ended up happening was I became a fairly popular figure in the past. And what ended up happening was in that lifetime, and it was in 1937, I was in the jungle because I had done a past life regression. I just went into it automatically, not knowing what I was going for, because it was in my training that I'd taken. And there I was in the jungle, and there was a huge, huge fig tree in front of me, and I had fallen and hurt myself, and I couldn't get back up. But in this fig tree, there was huge snakes. And the snake came down and wrapped itself around me, and there was some natives standing there with spears, but they didn't come to help me. And what ended up happening, the snake strangled me to death. So, of course, I emptied my bladder, and I was coughing because I couldn't breathe, and then I couldn't breathe, and I had heart palpitations, and that's what created my death in that lifetime. Now, in that session, when I saw all of this stuff, my instructor said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 40 years old. And what ended up happening, I went into the light, and then I found out what they did with my body afterwards. The natives came and gathered my body up, and they put me in a grass shack and laid it on a wooden table. And as I looked down at my body, because I had passed, I was able, my instructor had informed me to look down upon it as if I was watching what was happening to me while I was being strangled by the snake, because I just needed to feel that emotion for a second or two. And as I was watching my body, it disintegrated because it was in a very hot climate, and of course all that was left was the bones, because everything else dried up. But she did ask me how old I was and what my name was, which confirmed also something else that I knew as far as being that popular person. Right. And so anyway, numbers are very much connected, and that happened to me at the age of 40. I died at the age of 40 in that past life, and guess who became sick and had the exact same symptoms at the age of 40, and it was not able to be diagnosed. So there are reasons for people becoming ill and not finding out what's created it or what's caused it. Yeah. And that's where hypnotherapy comes in, because we can go back into those past lives lives and find out what it is that has created that dis-ease within our body. And a lot of that is connected with numbers. When those numbers come around again, it triggers. I call it a memory button.
Right.
And it takes you back into that memory of, whether it be in this lifetime or a previous life, past life, or numerous past lives. So it's very, very healing for that as well. So
essentially then, regardless, like you said, if it's this lifetime or past lifetime, we can, those patterns or that subconscious or memory, it can be carried forward from one lifetime to the next if it hasn't been dealt with.
Yes.
Right? And just kind of like, even in this lifetime, if you haven't dealt with it, but could you carry it forward from this lifetime, if you haven't dealt with it in this lifetime, to the next lifetime, right?
Absolutely. And now this is really interesting, because our daughter had a boyfriend and they were madly in love. They ended up buying a house together and whatnot, and they thought this was going to last forever. Actually, we thought it was going to last forever too. But the relationship came to an end, and my daughter was very upset and not understanding what was going on. So I asked her if she wanted to have a session and find out. And what we did, we went into her past life with this gentleman who was in her past life. And there was a love affair between the two of them. But what ended up happening, she was on a horse and the horse bucked her off and she ended up dying because of that. So that love affair was not able to come to fruition. And so that was unfinished business in that past life that had to be finished in this lifetime.
Right.
Now, my husband today was also in that past life of that snake and whatnot. Yeah. And he ended up dying before I did. And what happened to him was he felt that he wasn't going to be there to protect me and take care of me. And in this lifetime, he came back to do that exact thing. Right. And he has done an extremely marvelous job doing that.
Right. Yeah.
But it was his mission in this lifetime was to do that, and my mission in this lifetime was to find out why we were there.
Yes.
In that jungle. And so this is a mystery, and this is a book that I'm in the process of writing, as well as Tamara is going to probably do a podcast with me regarding this story. So stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned for that one. Yeah,
and keep your eye open for it. It's quite a story, let me tell you. And it's not only one past life, it involves 3 past lives that I have had.
Yeah.
And the confirmations that I have had in this lifetime of that unfinished business.
Yeah, it's definitely a very intertwined story, and it's quite fascinating. So it'll be, I'm looking forward to doing that with Brenda. So hopefully in the very near future we'll have that podcast, or it'll be a series of podcasts actually. So that will be coming up in the future. But yes.
I must say that Tamara, when I first met Tamara, it was a meant to be type of thing. And I needed somebody to help me write this book because I am not a writer. And Tamara, it was a person that I just randomly contacted, and it ends up we live blocks away from one another, not only here but also in Regina when we were both children. And so anyway, she has been the keeper of my story and my words since 2010, and we're getting closer and closer to completing this, and I'm really really thankful for her coming into my life.
It was definitely
meant to be.
It was definitely meant to be. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you sure can't. It would be quite a story, and hopefully it will be quite a story.
So fascinating stuff with hypnotherapy, how it does help and does heal people. If you are willing to do the work, and if you want to heal, like that's so important. If you want to heal, you got to go within. You got to figure out what's happening within and get rid of that stuff that's holding you back that you've buried for a really long time. So important. So
I have to just say one
Yeah.
thing. That was the hardest lesson I have had to learn. Was people don't want to help themselves. They love their diseases because they get something out of it.
Yeah.
They get attention from their spouse or from work. They don't have to work. They don't have to do this or that. So why would anybody want to change that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like somebody's
So
taking
it
care of
just-
me.
Yeah, it just amazes me. Like, you don't want to heal yourself? Like, why?
Yeah.
And it's funny, when they get that awareness, it's an aha moment. There's so many aha moments in this. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Oh,
Just
for sure.
incredible. And it's so rewarding.
Yeah. So, so with hypnotherapy, obviously you are certified, you have the training, you know what to do. So it's not something that people can do on their own. They need that guidance, right?
Yeah.
In a safe atmosphere, obviously.
Right.
So,
Because you can get into a place where you shouldn't be. And in saying that, it's nothing to be worried about, but make sure you have a professional that knows what they're doing, and definitely have the paranormal experience. That I have not ever done a session without the paranormal, and had I not taken that training, to me it's crucial.
Yeah.
Every hypnotherapist needs to have that training. And not only that, my psychic abilities have, I have had to trust them. Mm-hmm. And they are something I use constantly in a session, because I have to trust what I hear. I was doing a session with a woman, and I asked her to bring in her dad who had passed. And of course, she was blocking him. She didn't want to speak to her dad. And he was above me saying, I need to talk to her, basically. And so anyway, I didn't want him really to come into my body, and I didn't want to channel him, because I felt it was very important for my client to get that experience, because I then just become a psychic or a middleman or whatever the case may be. And it's so beneficial for my clients to get that message themselves, because they can't deny it.
yes.
When you receive that information, there is no denying it. And as a psychic or a medium or a channel, you can deny it.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe us. I mean, even though we do receive the actual word, you don't have to believe us. But when you receive that word yourself, there's no taking it away from it. It is what it is. So anyway, he was trying to come through me, and I thought, no, I don't want you to. And he kept on saying, closet. And I kept on hearing closet. And so I finally said to her, I said, what is it about a closet? Instantly, she opened up. The father was allowed to go in, and he had to apologize to her for locking her in a closet when she was a little girl.
Yeah.
So, karma comes around, whether it's in this lifetime or if you've passed. It's you as a soul or an entity, a ghost, or whatever you want to call it. It has to be rectified. It has to be rectified. And if it's not, it will haunt you. And trust me, that is hell.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, every ghost that has not completed that work is basically in hell, because there is unfinished business that needs to be completed. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so
it's huge.
important.
It's huge. It really is huge. There's so much about this that people don't understand, and they think it's woo-woo, and it's it's crazy, and it's made up, and it's you're the devil, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
No, it's not. It's abilities that we have been given from the second that we were born. We just don't know how to do it ourselves, and we need that help, and we need that training and that education as to how to do it. And that's what I'm here to do, is to give you that training and to give you the help that so many people need. I mean, there was years ago when I worked in the psychiatric unit that we did a tour of the Ponoka Hospital, which was a psychiatric facility, and there was people laying in rows and rows of beds, and pristine white, and everybody was laying perfectly the same direction, and the lights were dimmed and whatnot, and they were all people that were in comas.
Wow.
And that stuck with me for years.
Yeah.
And now I think about the work that I do, and I think, I would just love to go there and help all these people and hear their story from their relatives and whatnot, and find that puzzle, that piece of the puzzle that needs to be put into place and rectified, because it destroys so many people's lives, not only the person who has passed or is in a coma, but the families and the children and the parents and it's just horrific.
Yeah.
Just absolutely horrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lots of times we get things happen to us, and it goes into that subconscious mind, and what ends up happening is we block it. We don't want to remember it, and we have that ability to forget it and to not memorize it or know it. And this is a story that I need to tell because I know there's so many people affected by it. I was married at the age of 21, and sex to me, and excuse me if there's any children listening, but it was not pleasant for me whatsoever. And we went, thank God I had a very patient husband and still do. We've been married, it'll be 50 years next year, so he's very patient. But things have improved. But anyway, I had things happen to me that... So with his patience and me taking on these courses and whatnot, I was doing a session with a relative, and it had to do with a distant relative who had since passed on. And her grandmother had been sexually abused by this man, and really had never told anybody, but with my psychic abilities, I guess I sort of knew, as well as I felt her mother also had been sexually abused, and we were going into it, and I called the gentleman in, and as he was talking to my client, he said, and I actually sexually abused Brenda as well. And at that particular moment, I instantly had a flashback, and I was on the bathroom floor in the fetal position crying because he would not let me out of the bathroom. And the bathroom was mauve. So anyway, I had no idea that I had been sexually abused, but in that moment, I knew I had been. So anyway, what was really interesting, I had finished up the session because I couldn't go into my own issue. I was there to help my client. And what ended up happening, I ended up going home, and my husband was away on a trip, and he came home. And I didn't want to deal with this alone because I knew it was not a good thing to do. I just needed somebody to sit there with me. And so anyway, he walked in the door, and I went up to him, and the tears just started flowing. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I was sexually abused as a little girl." And he said, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Well, I was doing a session," and he instantly pushed me away because he doesn't believe in all this woo-woo stuff. Even though I have, done lots of confirmations regarding everything. But anyway, he was kind enough to sit with me in the session, and I had no memory whatsoever. But 2 weeks prior to me doing that session, we were getting intimate, and he said to me, "Will you promise me something?" And I said, "Well, yeah, if I can." He said, "Will you promise me you won't go in the fetal position and cry after we make love?" And I said, "Well, okay." I didn't realize I actually had done that. I said, "Yeah, okay, why?" And he says, "Because you make me feel like I've just, basically assaulted me." And so anyway, I said, "Oh yeah, of course." So anyway, what ended up happening, he sat with me while I did the session on myself, and I went into the subconscious mind, and I called my perpetrator in, and I said, "Okay, why did you do that to me?" And he said, "Well, actually, I did it to you because it was done to me when I was 7 years old by my mother." And with the anger that he carried regarding that, he gave it to all of us that had a 7. Again, here's some numbers.
Right.
I was 7 years old when he sexually abused me, as well as his step daughter was 17, and anybody with a 7 in their age, whether it be 57, 27, 7, whatever, that was a memory button that took him back to the day that he had been sexually abused by his mother.
Right.
So I was then able to forgive him because I felt his feelings, and they were no different than mine.
Yeah.
He was devastated, as was I when I found out, and actually admitted and felt the emotion that I felt that day
Right.
on the bathroom floor. So that was released, and that's where the forgiveness comes in, and that's what we can do with people, because nobody does things on purpose. It's all for a reason, and it's memory buttons that are being hit with them. They were hurt or abused or whatever the case may be. But once you understand what they're going through, all they want to do is give it to somebody else and get it out of their bodies, but they can't do it at the conscious level.
Right.
It has to be done at the subconscious level, and that's the work that I do.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you might say I'm a me too.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you said, that like this can be healed. You can heal those wounds that are just lying under the surface, with some effort, with just being willing, like we said before, willing to do that type of work. And can you imagine, your life would be so different or our lives would be so different if we just took the time to heal. And it is like peeling an onion, though. Brenda and I have discussed this before. It's a process, for sure.
And it's not invasive, other than the fact that all I do is talk to you and you talk back and you do feel the emotion. But guess what? You've been through that emotion and you survived it.
Yes.
And you will survive this too. It's not like cutting somebody open or handing you a pile of chemicals or, that type of thing. It's very easy and very simple, but you will feel emotion. Yeah. There's no doubt. And you will go back to that moment, but you only have to feel it for a second in order for it to be released. Right. That's it. That's it. But it cannot be done consciously.
Yeah.
It has to be subconscious.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, wonderful. What a great talk this has been. And I'm so blessed to know Brenda and just the healing that she provides to people. I know that just in discussing things with Brenda, how she's helped so many people out, and it's what a gift. What a gift you have.
It is, and I take it as a gift. I was given this gift in order to help people. I know that. Yeah. And that's why I continually...
That's right. You're passionate about it. This
Absolutely.
Is what you have to do this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the book part I'm not too sure about, but...
The book will come. The book will come.
Let me do a session anytime, but sit down and write? Oh, I don't know.
That's another story. It'll come for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Brenda, where can people find you, and can you do remote sessions as well?
Oh, yes. Well, 2000 and 2001 was quite an experience, and it turned out to be a good thing, because I've done sessions over phones and on Skype and whatnot, and it's a godsend, because otherwise, I probably would not have gone that direction. And even though I am willing to go to wherever anybody is and whatnot, it's can be done there as well.
So worldwide,
yes. Yeah. And also you can reach me at brendasharp.com. That's my webpage, or give me a call at 860-4211. My email address, that was area code 403. 860-4211. Sorry. And my email address is sharp, with no E, SHARP, dot, don't forget the dot, Brenda, BRENDA, at gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you and helping you if you need. Or if you even have a question to ask me, can this help this? Or, well, what about that? Or whatever the case may be, definitely give me a call and we can talk. I love to talk and tell people about what this can do for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I will include Brenda's contact details in the show notes or in the show details, and yeah, check out her website. She's got a lot of information on there that can help you, and reach out to her, and she can guide you through some healing. So thank you so much, Brenda, for
thank you, Tamara,
coming on the show
pleasure.
again. And I can't wait for further podcasts with you, because it's always interesting.
Yeah, it is. My life is not boring. Let's put it that way.
So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will hear you next time. So take care, everyone.
Thanks, Tamara.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.